Nice if it would start. All right, there we go. Okay, so here we're taking a look at the course schedule. Today is Monday the 14th. So as we can see right here on the June calendar, we're looking to have Unit 2 started this week for sure. We're going to see if you're following the course schedule. By Friday, we're hoping to see the first drawing assignment relating to the project turned in by Friday, followed by next Tuesday, the interior plan. Both of those assignments I'm going to be working through, demonstrating today in this recording. And then next Monday, I will be recording the second portion of the demonstration for Unit 2. That's probably going to be the format that we're going to take from here on out. Depends on kind of how heavy the assignments are. The reason I broke it up is the first couple of assignments in this unit are a little bit heavier than the following ones. So we'll take a look at that. So to start off, we're going to be working on the floor plan shell here. These are the instructions. Those are contained within the actual assignment, as always. All of these files, any file that you need is going to be contained in that assignment page. So pull up Revit. So this is the file that you should have completed in, or this is my version of the file that you should have completed in Unit 1. So this has our units set correctly. Let's save that. So it should have all of our units set correctly, feet and fractional inches to the nearest eighth, suppress the 0 feet, and then it'll have your project information filled out correctly. So we're going to be working out of the same file the whole time. There are very few instances, I think, where we'll create a new file or change it. So make sure you keep track of this file. We're kind of compounding on top of it as we go. So to start off, I'll pull up the instructions and follow along as you all would. What we're going to do is we're actually going to create our shell. So this is kind of like, it's a commercial building. So there's not a whole lot going on in the interior, especially in this big warehouse space. Most of the interior walls are going to be taking place over here. So we're going to start off with this assignment just by creating this exterior shell using the 5 different wall types that we created. So that's one of the reasons why we set all those up to begin with, because we do want to differentiate between the different wall types as we're going through this assignment. So to start with, we'll go ahead and select the wall command, and we'll go in, and I want to start on the back side because it's one long instance of that 4B wall type. So I'll select that and then just click in here. And what we'll see, we've got our location line option here. You always, with these exterior walls, we want to set the finish face exterior, especially for these wall types that we're going to modify later on down the road. That's going to keep our footprint consistent even when we change, say, the structure of these and they get thicker or thinner. This line that we established to begin with, you can see where it's rooted, is going to be consistent no matter what changes we make. So if I pull up the floor plan, you can kind of zoom in and see some of the dimensions. It's kind of hard to read, especially on the assignment instructions, so definitely use that floor plan PDF. We're just going to grab that overall dimension of 147 feet. So to do that, once you select a point, just type in that 147, and it'll automatically draw the distance that we want. Now, if we go back to that floor plan, we're going to take a look and see that this is really the only time that we're using that 4B. We're going to switch over to 4A now. So we can hit escape, go in and select our 4A wall type. Now, this floor plan requires a little bit of interpretation, some math, basic math, addition, subtraction, stuff like that. So what we're seeing here is we have an overall distance of 65 feet. We don't really have a good call out of where 4A turns into the wall type 3. If we hop over to the building elevations, there's a little bit more information on that. We can see that both instances of those side wall type 3 is at 24 feet even. So, if we go in, subtract the difference, we can, with our 4A selected, we'll go in, and if, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say that's 41 feet to get to that 65 overall. So then we're going to go ahead and select our wall type 3. Just grab that exact same point and type in that 24. Then we can hit escape. So we've got the instance of wall type 4B back here. We've got 4A there, and we've got wall type 3 there. And when you see these temporary dimensions pop up, they're not exactly where we want them to be, but if you zoom in and look, they're tying to the center lines of the walls, which is normal, which is fine. Normal, these are driven dimensions, which means that we could modify the length of the wall by changing these. But when we have these selected and see where they land, if I were to change this, if I were to modify the dimension, I could drop it over on that corner and it would change the overall for me. Okay. Now that we've got these sides set up, we could go in and draw them again on this side, or we can start using some of the tools. If I grab this mirror tool, draw axis with these walls selected, I know it's identical on the other side. I'm just going to navigate to try to find the center line of this wall and draw that axis, and it'll go ahead and mirror that for me, just like if we were using a different CAD software. Now we'll jump back over to the elevations PDF to get that front done. So we see the little 2-foot return on either side that's using that wall type 3. That's, just as simple as it sounds. So with that wall type 3 selected, go ahead, just click directly on that corner and just type in the 2 feet. We could do it over here on the other side if we wanted to, but I'm going to just go ahead and do a run of the different walls. So we alternate between wall type 1, wall type 2, wall type 1, all the way back over. So there's 5 individual walls all the way down. Jumping over the floor plan gives us some of the dimensions that we're going to need there. Specifically, we're going to be looking at this 28-foot 10. When we get over to the edges, we see those are kind of broken up. Again, if we do a little bit of math, what we're going to wind up with, I believe, is we'll switch over to that wall type 1. And these walls here on the edge, once we subtract the necessary kind of additional dimensions that are shown there, we're going to wind up with something around 28 foot 3 inches. And then from there, all we're going to do is that's when we're going to go use the actual dimensions given to us, that 28 foot 10. We don't have to do any math from there on out. As you can see, those dimensions are rooted exactly to the wall ends. And we'll just alternate between wall type 1 and wall type 2, finishing off those dimensions. 28 foot 10. You can see Revit snaps really well to the 90-degree marks, the 90-degree points, so we can draw pretty consistently in a straight line. Center point, switch back over one more time to wall type 2, 28 foot 10. That. And then wall type 1. And if I was correct, go ahead and drop that 28 foot 3. And if we go back over to wall type 3, this should end up giving us that run there. And you'll see something that we're seeing right here where I still have it on that finished face exterior, but it's running the wrong way. If I go this way, like the way that I've been going the whole time, it's, turning it in towards the center of the building like I want. But when I go this way, it doesn't seem to do that. If I were to hit spacebar, it's going to flip about that location line. And I'll just draw this right to the end, that wall. Now, it's not super important at this point that all these wall lengths are exactly the right dimension. We want to try to keep it consistent my math may have been a little bit off when it came to these because I think the runs wound up a little short. Worked earlier, but what we're going to end up doing, and when we move over to the next portion of the assignment, you're going to see how easy it is to modify these walls as we go. So we'll use this as a go-by and call this our shell. And it doesn't look all that special right now. It doesn't, if we go to the 3D view, it doesn't actually show us any differences between these walls because we haven't made any changes to the wall structure. But this is set up now to where when we do change those different wall types to account for the different structures, the different surfaces, the different heights, it'll automatically calculate all those things and replace these walls with the correct ones. After that, what we want to do, if we take a look back at the shell instructions, that's going to be it. What I was thinking of is in the next assignment. So that's all that we really need for that right there. Try to get as close to the floor plan layout as possible. Again, as long as we have all the instances of the walls and the overall footprint is accurate, we're going to be in good shape to move on. Any changes that need to be made based on inconsistencies with your model like mine, or changes made to the model because of different wall structures are going to be pretty easy to work around. So next, or the follow-up assignment is going to be this floor plan interior, where we're going to be working further on our model. To start with, we want to place some grids, and this is going to show you, how easy it is to start to modify some of the elements. So we've got 6 grid lines horizontally, and then 6 vertical grid lines that we're going to space out horizontally, and then 2 horizontal grid lines that we're going to space vertically. So back here, all we're going to do over on the right side is grab that grid command. We're going to just start dropping these in wherever we feel like. It doesn't really matter because we're going to modify them later on. So we're going to pull this up in that general area. And you can see that we need to make some changes to make it consistent with the floor plan. So for one, this is going to be grid 1. Whenever you have the grid selected over in the properties menu, we're just going to change that name to 1. It's going to replace what's in that bubble. And if you grab this circle down at the very bottom where we started the grid, you can drag it down and that'll run the grid line all the way. And if we look back at the floor plan, it shows that we've got the grid bubble callouts on either end. That's what this little box is here. If you check that, it'll show that bubble down there. So we'll try to make it a little bit more consistent around. Then what we need to do from here is route this grid where it's rooted in the floor plan. So if we jump back over to our actual floor plan, we can see where these grids are dimensioned to. So this grid line right here, grid line 1, is spaced 1.5 feet or 1 foot 5 inches off of the exterior face of the right side of the building. So we've got some temporary dimensions in here that we can go modify. So this one is the one I want to use. So I can actually click on that little dot and drag it over to the edge, and you see it kind of really wants to keep itself rooted to that center line. If I wanted to drop it over on this edge like I do, one of the things I can do is hit the tab key on my keyboard, and it'll start to grab different elements that I can route those things to. Once you hit tab and it shows up, we're just going to input that correct dimension. You can see that it moved the entire grid line over to the correct distance. So I'll go ahead and modify and take a look. Looks good. I'll grab the next grid, and I'm just going to drop that over here in space. You can see it starts to align accurately because we want those aligned all the way across the board. We'll drag it down, align it again, show the next bubble. And you can see if you work this way, it'll automatically start to name those grid callouts accurately. So from there, we want to go find out where those temporary dimensions are. This one, I believe all these grids, yeah, they're dimensioned at exactly that 28 foot 10 inches that we saw before. So we're going to go ahead and start to offset that distance. So again, we'll grab the edge and just tie it to that. Okay. And I'm recording the demonstration for unit 2 right now. So if you want to hop in and follow along. So what we were doing here is we're going to go ahead and set the dimension between these two. I got it pretty close, but I'm going to go ahead and override that to the 28 feet 10 inches. It's already set up exactly where we want. We're going to replicate that process all the way across. So up in our grids, set them how we want them, and then just tie those dimensions in. It's going to be the exact same process for the A and B over on the sides. I can actually go ahead and just drop all those in. You can see it's a quicker way to do it, where you drop them all in and then modify them later on. .28 feet 10. Go see if that's accurate. Okay, so we're going to have that same 1 foot 5 inch dimension here. We'll check to see what's going on with that. That's what our issue was. Well, either way, that's how we're setting up grids. Don't want to keep everybody here too long. It's not a hugely complicated process setting those up. Sometimes you run into issues here and there where you need to go modify certain things, but that's the basic idea behind it. Same exact thing is going to take place over here. We're going to call this A. This one, we're not dragging a bubble all the way across. We only want that shown on the one side. And that next grid is going to drop over here. That'll be B. That's our grid set up pretty much how we want them. You'll take a little bit more time getting those done and getting them exactly where they need to be. But from that point, what we need to do is we need to start dropping in some of our interior walls. We're creating some new interior walls for this. We're duplicating some of the existing ones, very similar to how we did before. These we're just going to change the names, and we're going to change the interior wall structure. I've already done that here, but I'll let you take a look. So I've set up the interior 4 3/4 inch partition. What I duplicated was, so in the edit type menu, exact same way, I duplicated the 4 7/8 inch partition to create that 4 3/4 inch. And all that was changed was this metal stud layer was changed to, I believe that was just changed down to a 3.5 inch metal stud. Same exact thing with our 8 inch partition. I just copied the 4 3/4 partition, and we changed that to an 8 inch metal stud layer. This is going to be our plumbing partition. Make sure to make that note in the name whenever you set that up. And I'll kind of briefly run through how we're going to go ahead and drop these in. If you look at the assignment instructions, one of the notes down here is to use the face of core location line as opposed to a finished face exterior or a kind of a core center line or just a basic wall center line. That's because if you take a look in the floor plan at the actual dimensions, they're all tied to that core face. It's hard to tell But whenever we're setting up these dimensions for like a framing plan, what they're really concerned with is where they're actually going to put the studs, not so much how thick the chipboard's going to be. That stuff is all taken into account later on, but they want to know where to place those studs. So what we're going to do, some of these are rooted to grid lines, which make them pretty easy. Those are kind of standout elements because we can actually draw those with the location line as the actual wall center line. So we take a look, that's over on 3 and 2 with the grid. And you can see why we wanted to set these grid lines up before we got into this process. That makes these a little bit easier. So we'll set that to, you can set it to either wall or core center line. Doesn't really matter all that much. And we'll just run these the entire length of the building. Same over here on 2. And from there, we need to drop a couple more walls in. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all of these. It's kind of it's the same process all the way through, but I'll show you kind of the way that I would do it. You can see that this wall doesn't actually run all the way down. It's broken up here. That's no problem. What we'll do is we're going to start. I'm actually going to pull this over onto my other screen so I can see it as I'm going. What I would recommend, the quickest and easiest way to set this all up, now that we've kind of gotten a feel for the temporary dimensions, we can see how easily we can use those to make changes to existing structures, existing walls, existing elements, stuff like that. So I'm going to set it to the core face exterior and try to reference these. You can see it's kind of the bottom side as far as that core is shown on the dimension. So I'm just going to space these out however I feel like. I can hit that space. And I'm just going to draw these walls kind of in space here. This wall all the way down, actually. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm just going to kind of block this out and make changes elsewhere once they're all done. Don't need to hit the space bar if you go from the other side. And continue this all the way across. We've got those kind of interior spaces blocked out similar to how they would be here. You don't have to do it that way. You could draw them exact as you place those walls. But what I'm doing here is I'm going to start using these temporary dimensions to set those correctly. So I'll use like this 11 foot, this 15 foot 4, and that 12 foot 4 to set these walls here accurately. If I click that, you can see where those dimensions are driven to. I'll go ahead and grab these. Again, using the tab option to set those where I want. I'll go ahead and set that at 11 feet. That's going to move it up that distance. And then just replicate that process all the way around. What we'll end up with is those consistent dimensions all the way across. See here that this wall was actually, I placed it at 12 foot 4. That's supposed to be 15 foot 4. I'm going to come back in and make the change to this dimension here, which isn't a problem. And you can see how, it's really, really easy to modify these elements once I place them in the model. Another thing that we can do that I'll show quickly is how we're going to trim these around. Because if you take a look here, I've got a little hallway here to an exterior door, and that lets into this room here. But I've got that all blocked off. This wall, with these walls selected, we can use this kind of trim and extend a corner. These are actually going to just trim those walls exactly where we want them to go. You can see it kind of drops those. When I use that there, it dropped that wall all the way around, so we can start to mess around with the different options. It's a single element. So, oh yeah, which one is it? We can split this element here. Gonna work. No, I can just go in and delete that and start to make some of those adjustments. So there's a bunch of different commands here that you can use. The trim and extend to corner works if you overdrew a line, like if I had separated those walls, which is probably a better way to do it. You could have just trimmed that there and around that edge. And we see here that this wall end is a little bit off. Those are all changes that can be made. Those are all adjustments that can be made pretty easily as we go. There's a little jog here that we're going to end up creating. But I mean, those are the main kind of tips and tricks I wanted to point out when it comes to laying out this interior. Use your grid lines, use your modify commands. If you have any background at all in any 2D modeling like AutoCAD or anything, these commands are going to be really, really similar. You just keep in mind that we're working with 3D elements. And then when we jump over to the 3D, you can start to see how those are set up in there. So replicate that process for each of the different wall types. I'm already like a half hour into this demonstration. I don't want to make this, a crazy long video. So I'm not going to go through everything here, but if anybody has any questions about, when you start to drop in plumbing walls or anything, should be the exact same process. But if for some reason it's giving you trouble when you're breaking these walls around those partitions, just reach out to me. And, if you have any questions regarding anything else, reach out to me for that as well. So that'll conclude the demonstration today. Go ahead and complete these, submit, and continue on if you want to with the follow-up assignments. If not, I will be doing the demonstration for the next group of assignments next Monday. So thanks for watching, and reach out to me with any questions or comments.